Domain expansions are the absolute best ability in Jujutsu Kaisen, but which one is the best, and which one is the worst? Are there even any bad ones? Well, no, but there are definitely some that are better than others, so today we'll be going through all of them to figure out which of the 13 is the best one. This is the general criteria I used, and let's get into this. The worst domain in Jujutsu Kaisen as it stands now is probably Chimera Shadow Garden. Chimera Shadow Garden isn't a bad domain because there are no bad domains. The reason I put it in last is because it just doesn't give its user that much strength, at least not compared to the other domains that exist. The domain allows its user to flood an area with the shadows of the 10 shadows technique, which can then be used extremely flexibly, as any of the shadows Shikigami can be summoned from the pool without the need for hand signs. This provides the user with a lot of utility, but it doesn't actually make the user all that much stronger, at least not with the iterations we've seen from Megumi. It's entirely possible that Mahoraga is even more broken in this domain, or that the spine we see is some sort of secret 11th Shikigami, but because we never see either of these things happen, they're not something I can take into account. The other major reason this domain is down here is that Chimera Shadow Garden is the only domain expansion in the show that is not complete, as it relies on naturally occurring walls for its barriers. This means it's the only domain in the series that does not have a sure hit of any kind, and it also highly limits its usability, as it cannot be used in any battles that take place outside. Fitting for an ability that belongs to Mr. Potential, this domain could be absolutely broken if Megumi had more time to mature with it, but he didn't, and as a result, it sits in last. But only by a bit, because the next worst domain is another Shikigami based one. It's Horizon of the Captivating Skanda belonging to Dagon. This domain is less cool than Megumi's, but it should give you a good idea of what his domain is going up against in terms of strength. Horizon of the Captivating Skanda allows Dagon to summon hundreds of invisible Shikigami that do not appear until they are biting onto their target. This functions as a very effective sure hit, as it was able to damage first grade sorcerers with very little issue. It did permanent damage to Nanami and Nobito despite his anti-domain technique. If Megumi and Toji had not intervened, then the three fighting Dagon would have lost to him without a doubt, which shows the domain's strength. But if we're being honest, this isn't even that strong for a domain. Considering the degree of damage done to the sorcerers in the domain and the speed at which it was done, any sorcerer with reverse curse technique should be able to nullify the effects of Deathstorm with relatively little issue. And when you compare this to some of the other domains we have to talk about, which can one-shot opponents and basically do the same exact thing but 1,000 times better, it really shows how middling this domain is. At 11, we have the Smallpox Deity's domain. Putting this above Dagon's domain might come as a surprise, and to be honest, I went back and forth on these two a lot, but in the end, I came to this conclusion. Dagon is undoubtedly the stronger cursed spirit of the two, but the Smallpox Deity's domain is much more effective for its purpose. Instead of sending a bunch of Shikigami to suckle on opposing sorcerers, the Smallpox Deity simply puts its target in a box and then kills them if they can't escape by the count of 3. If they do escape, they get put back into the box immediately if they are in the line of sight of the deity. This makes the domain extremely effective for 1v1 battles, as it is almost impossible for the opponent to win unless they have a domain of their own, or are just overwhelmingly stronger, which isn't likely considering this is a special grade cursed spirit. Its weak point though is battles with multiple people, as it seems like the deity is only capable of putting one sorcerer in a box at a time. In a lot of ways, it is almost the exact opposite of Dagon's domain, because his domain is uniquely good at dealing with crowds. In reality, these two domains could probably be tied, but personally, I think it's more important to have an easy time killing an opponent rather than being able to deal with multiple opponents at once. So it goes over Dagon. Rounding out the top 10 is Idle Death Gambit. Yeah, I was surprised too, but looking at the rest of the domains we have to talk about, Idle Death Gambit just has to be here. While the effect of giving its user unlimited cursed energy is good, it doesn't give them the same offensive power as any other domain, even the other non-lethal ones. From what we've seen, the unlimited cursed energy doesn't seem to make Hikari all that strong, as both Kashimo and Uraume have been able to hold their own against it without any sort of buff. But that's mostly because it's not the main advantage of this domain, as the real value of this unlimited cursed energy is the near immortality the user gains via automatic reverse curse technique, which heals the user faster than even Gojo and Sukuna can. While this is a broken ability, capable sorcerers will just wait until the automatic reverse curse technique ends, which it will eventually, to make their hardest assault. We saw this with Kashimo waiting until the ability ran out to use his electricity, almost costing Hikari his life if he hadn't gotten a very lucky roll. The other big issue with this ability is how long it lasts. A lot of Jujutsu Kaisen battles take a good amount of time, so an ability that lasts 4 minutes and 11 seconds will have to be activated at least a few times against stronger opponents, meaning it's extremely unlikely for this ability to carry a sorcerer through an entire battle. kill. If this ability lasted longer, I'd say it could move higher up, but it doesn't, and that kind of holds the domain back. I know, I don't like it either. So let's just move on to number 9, which is Yozuru's domain, Threefold Affliction. Seeing this one above Idle Death Gambit might be a surprise, but this domain is actually pretty broken. It's just that we saw it go up against Sukuna, which made it look weak. Kinda like Jogo, who we'll be talking about in a little bit. Threefold Affliction basically ensures that all of Yozuru's constructions will hit their targets via the sure hit effect. This is good in general because all of Yozuru's constructs are pretty powerful, but it pairs best with Perfect Sphere, as the construct should, in theory, destroy anything it comes in contact with thanks to exerting infinite pressure. It's a combination that really shouldn't be beaten in Yozuru's domain, meaning the main way to beat this domain is with a more refined domain, which probably isn't all that common. This pretty much gives Yozuru a guaranteed win against any sorcerer that is weaker than her, and that's a huge benefit compared to any of the domains that exist below her. At 8 we have Womb Profusion, the domain belonging to Kenjaku. This domain is weird to rank. On one hand, the domain itself doesn't seem all that strong. Its effect is basically to force a huge amount of gravity on anyone within Kenjaku's domain. This was able to do decent damage to Yuki, but even then it was really only one of her arms that she had to heal. This implies that the domain itself probably doesn't have all that much power, but it does belong to Kenjaku, who is the second best barrier user in the series behind Tengen. This means the domain could be extremely refined, making it hard to counter. In fact, this domain seems extremely adept at destroying anti-domain techniques like Simple Domain, as Yuki's was stripped away in a matter of panels. It seems like this is a domain that is meant to be good in a battle of domains rather than a domain that is good for combat in general, if that makes sense. This means it could potentially be a lot of the domains on this list, but we've only seen it used in a single situation, so it's really hard to say. Between this and Kenjaku's general strength with barriers, Womb Profusion is by far the weirdest domain to rank. It could be much stronger than I'm giving it credit for, but due to the lack of evidence, I can't really justify putting it any higher. At 7, we have the other non-lethal domain, Deadly Sentencing. Deadly Sentencing is an extremely versatile domain that can effectively nerf Higuruma's opponents in almost any situation. The domain is dependent on Judgment finding the defendant, Higuruma's opponent, guilty of a crime they may have committed. This is dependent on evidence and the defendant's rebuttal to Higuruma's claims, so technically they could come out of the domain unscathed, but that's just really unlikely unless they're also a lawyer. If the opponent is found guilty, they suffer a huge debuff, losing access to their curse technique or their cursed energy in general if they don't have one. This is huge. It can put almost any opponent in a disadvantageous position against Higuruma, and he can use it to win against much stronger opponents than he would normally be able to. But that's not all. If Higuruma is facing an opponent that has done a crime worthy of the death penalty, Higuruma gains the Executioner's Sword, which is a sword that can kill anything it touches with just one touch. This ability is insane, but it does have a pretty high condition to activate, and that's actually the exact reason this domain isn't higher, as some domains we still have to talk about can just kill whoever is in the domain with no condition. For instance, at 6, we have Coffin of the Iron Mountain. You might be surprised to see this domain so high up, but I can explain it in one sentence. According to Gojo, this domain would burn the average sorcerer to a crisp in a matter of seconds. That's how hot the heat in this domain is. While you could say that Gojo was overrating the domain to make a point, when we do see Jogo come in contact with some sorcerers, his fire outside his domain leaves them scorched in a matter of seconds, so I don't think it would be too surprising if this level of heat was possible for his domain as well. Plus, it is modeled after the inside of a volcano, which can get up to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, so I don't think it's a super inaccurate statement. Unfortunately, we don't know much else about this domain because we only got to see it once, so we don't know what the sure hit actually is, and we don't know how it would interact with anti-domain techniques either. We also know it's less effective against the upper echelon of sorcerers, as Gojo was able to withstand the heat even though domains can bypass infinity. In my opinion, this domain is the very peak of what a normal domain with no extra effects can reach. It is an extremely powerful domain despite what I've said so far. It just gets outclassed by the domains that we haven't talked about yet, as most of them have specific effects that make them stronger, like Cursed Noya's domain Time Cell Moon Palace, which is at number 5 by the way. That was my transition. I'm so good at this. Anyway, Time Cell Moon Palace is pretty much the exact opposite of Jogo's. It has no environmental effects but has a completely broken sure hit. It essentially pushes the projection sorcery technique to the absolute limit, injecting frames of animation into the opponent's body as the sure hit, which then wreaks havoc on their body by freezing individual cells. This alone can cause internal hemorrhaging and damage to organs, but if the victim moves, it can go as far as severing whole limbs. While this isn't as outright deadly as Jogo Mihiro's domain, it can easily lead to more wins as it basically immobilizes opponents, preventing them from attacking and more importantly making countering with a domain nearly impossible, as the opponent's arms will get severed before they can make the hand signs necessary for a domain. Really, the only sorcerers that might be able to beat it are Gojo and Sukuna thanks to their ability to regrow limbs, Jackpot Hakari for obvious reasons, and any sorcerer that can move at 24 frames per second, of which there is one. It is a truly broken domain that can really only be beaten by anti-domain techniques or a stronger opponent opening their domain first. At fourth, we have a domain that kind of combines the past two to become even more effective. Mihiro's domain, Self-Embodiment of Perfection. This domain uses Idol Transfiguration as a guaranteed hit, which is obviously very broken as the domain is able to one-shot a wide variety of sorcerers. The damage it does to sorcerers that it doesn't kill is also hard to heal because it does damage directly to the soul, and this applies to literally anyone that steps foot in the domain automatically. So Mihiro can pretty much kill whoever he wants whenever he wants within his domain. We saw this used to remove Todo's hand in Shibuya, and it was also almost used on Nanami as well in season 1. Both times Mihiro intended to kill with Idol Transfiguration, but he did fail, much like me in my college calculus class. Regardless, we all know how deadly base Idol Transfiguration is, and considering curse techniques get stronger when they're in their domain, it would be even more deadly here. But you know what's better than a domain like Self-Embodiment of Perfection? A domain that can imbue Idol Transfiguration into its barrier only when needed, because that's pretty much what Yuta's domain can do, and his domain is the one that comes in third place. Mutual Authentic Love allows Yuta to imbue one of his copied curse techniques into the barrier of his domain so it acts as the guaranteed hit. This means Jacob's Ladder, Sukuna's technique, and so many more can act as a guaranteed hit, and there's no way to know which one it is until he activates it, unless it's obvious like in Sukuna's case. To be clear, this does not mean that he copies the domain of whatever technique he has copied, just that he can make the technique itself a guaranteed hit. So he can't copy the constant slashing afforded by Sukuna's domain, but he can make cleave or dismantle the sure hit. This is still great though, as pretty much any technique in the show can be used as a sure hit while being charged by Yuta's huge pool of cursed energy, which will make maximum output variations obscenely strong. Depending on how many techniques he has copied, he can pretty much just counterpick abilities that are bad matchups for his opponents. It is a very intentionally broken domain expansion, but unfortunately it just cannot be as strong as the top two, which are of course Malevolent Shrine and Unlimited Void. But which domain is worse of the two? While they are equal in power and refinement, there is one that I think is better as a domain, and it's not Malevolent Shrine, meaning that it comes in at number 2. Don't get me wrong, Malevolent Shrine is an amazing ability, that's why it's at number 2 in the first place. It is sure to kill almost anyone in the series, as the constant slashing of Cleave and Dismantle will be too much damage for 99% of opponents to deal with. On top of this, Sukuna himself can also attack while his domain is active, further pushing his advantage. But the most impressive thing about this domain is undoubtedly that it is the only barrierless domain in the entire series. Probably. There is some ambiguity surrounding Kinjaku's domain also being barrierless, but the general consensus seems to be that he used Tengen's barrier instead of creating his own, so his is still likely barriered. Anyway, Sukuna's domain being not barriered is an incredible feat. Described as being like a painter painting on thin air, it is a truly divine accomplishment, and it is fitting for an ability belonging to the strongest sorcerer in Jujutsu Kaisen. But to be honest, despite the feat of a barrierless domain, the effect of this domain itself is not the best in the series. That title goes to Unlimited Void, which in my opinion is the best domain in Jujutsu Kaisen. But I totally respect your opinion if you think the title should go to Malevolent Shrine. Both are the pinnacle of domains in their own way, but personally I just think Unlimited Void is better purely because its effect is better. The mind-melting effect of Unlimited Void absolutely guarantees its user a win. Let me put it to you this way. In the Gojo and Sukuna fight, Gojo was able to survive the full ass-ripping effects of Sukuna's domain multiple times, coming out with moderate injuries each time but nothing he couldn't heal from. But when Sukuna was exposed to Unlimited Void for a fraction of a second, it rendered him completely unable to use his domain. If Mahoraga hadn't popped its puss at the exact perfect time, Sukuna would have just lost here. That's how much better the effect of Unlimited Void is than Malevolent Shrine. Sure, Malevolent Shrine has some advantages, like being barrierless and having an area of effect as big as your mom, but do those really matter when Unlimited Void can turn an opponent into a shell of their former self the second it is activated? The answer is not really, and as such, Unlimited Void gets first place for me. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join the Discord and follow me on Twitch because I am going to start streaming soon, and I'll see you again next week for another video.